The art of screen printing.
Hey folks, Lon Winters and Cory Gray with Graphic Elephants here.
Hey,
This is the art of screen printing presented by GSG. Hey, we're getting started on those wedges, and Cory's going to lay in the base, and we're going to keep working on the separation for our emblem.
okay, so here is basically the wedges sitting in front of the rings. I want to start with literally the knockout first, and actually I'm going to remove the wedges, and here's just the knockout. So with the basically a big stroke around it, so we can keep it really away from those rings and that mesh. Okay, so I'm going to make a selection of just the layer that knockout is on. And if I haven't talked about this before, you've heard me say I'm making a selection. The shortcut that I use is if you roll the cursor arrow over the thumbnail, whether it's in channels or in layers, and you hold your command key down, it might be Alt for PC, but if you hold it down, you'll see a little square with dots around it, like the marching ants. You click on that, and that will select any information that's on that particular channel or layer. Okay, so now that we have that, I'm going to make an alpha channel because I want this to be a mask to use as I need to, if I need to. So I'm going to go ahead and fill it. And this is not a spot channel because a spot channel is what you use to make your separations show on your whip software. And you can see it's a selected area only. So we're going to say, okay, I'm just going to move that up as a mask. I'm going to make a selection of it. And we're going to knock it out of basically our blue. So just go ahead and hit delete. And then I'm going to go up here to my white printer that we had from the rings, and I'm going to knock that out as well. But the difference from the white printer is we want to go ahead and expand that a little bit, because just like when we choke, the knockout is going to go right to the straight edge. And so I want to go ahead and make that 2 pixels, so that way there's no trap of the other colors to help us with that base. So it's kind of hanging out there next to the garment. So I want to account for that, okay? So now we can kind of see that we turn everybody on, that those are now knocked out. So let's go back up to layers and go and turn the actual wedges themselves on. And we're just going to basically make the shape of the wedge and the base. So let's go make a selection of it, and it's only selecting the shape, okay? So I'm going to make, I made a purple spot channel for it. We're going to go ahead and we're going to fill it. And then, of course, we're going to make our base. And we're going to choke that, our usual 2 pixels, so contract it by 2 pixels. We're going to go up to an actual white printer channel for just the wedges right now and hit and fill it. And then, of course, I'm going to turn my fabric back on. I'm going to turn on those purple wedges. And I'm going to go ahead and we're going to zoom up, and we're going to see there's that lip that we're always talking about. Always make sure that you're not having that peakage out. It will ruin your day if that shows on any of your prints, okay? And then, now we'll come in on the next video and we'll talk about breaking these down, the shadows and the highlights, but it's very similar to what we did with all of these chromes on the ring. So we're going to see a lot of the same steps being made, but we did add an extra shadow later on in our development of the image. So we're going to do those in 2 separate spots. So much like the chrome rings again, we applied our basically our bevel, and you know we used a highlight and a shadow. So let's go ahead and break those down. For our shadow portion, I'm going to turn the fabric off and also this outer glow. And then let's go ahead and look at our breakdowns. And we can see that the blue actually has the best information here, because it's basically knocking out or removing some of these grayscale values that are going on. We just want the shadow area. So I'm going to click and drag this down and make a copy. And then we're going to basically go to our white base for the white, our white printer for the wedges, and I'm going to go ahead and make a selection of that area on the shadow. I'm going to go up here and I'm just going to basically delete it right out. So 1, 2, 3, and 4, and it gives us about a 6% left over there. So if I turn my fabric on, you can see how much removal we've done. So here's our nice bright part of the base, which is great for all the other colored portion of it. And then the shadows here. So I'm going to go ahead and remove the shadow information that I no longer need. Let's go ahead and do the white. And then we need the fabric on for this, because the fabric helps define our white edges when we're trying to find that information. So if I go through my breakdowns here, it looks like The green's the best one because you can see, much like the blue with the shadows, the green has left us all of the white highlight area. So let's go ahead and click and drag that down. And as we do with all of our stuff for getting white information positive, we just inverse that selection. That's Command I. We'll inverse the information. I'm going to go ahead and make a selection of it. And I'm going to put it on its own white highlight spot white channel. There we go. I'm going to remove this green copy we no longer need. Let's go ahead and just turn on the wedge base and the color of the wedges itself, which is purple. And then let's go ahead and turn on our white highlights. And you can see now that this is starting to emulate what we're seeing in our full color comp here. One thing I want to change real quick is actually sometimes the white's a little heavy. So when it prints, because white gains quickly and it's very opaque. Right now it's at 40%. I want to use my levels and I kind of want to bring that down a little bit. You can see it starting to remove itself. I'm also going to remove it from the middle so it really pushes these lighter tones almost in half. Now I'm losing some of my opacity here and what I consider to be the brightest parts of these wedges. So let's say okay, and we're going to go into curves now. Curves is great because instead of doing things exponentially like levels, you can find a targeted value and then you can either bring it up in density or you can lower it. In this case, I want to bring it up. So you can see how this part's changing, but as I toggle, nothing else is really changing. So I'm just affecting that area. So let's just say okay. Let's turn everybody back on and take a good look at it. Turn our base on as well. And now you can see that's even looking a little bit better. It's a little softer along some of these edges, but it's looking a lot like what our original color comp was. And we're going to add more to this area down here because you can see how flat the shadow is. So when we were doing this originally, I did go back in and add an extra dimension to that area because it was just too flat and too large. When you're working with large areas or shapes with bevel and emboss, the larger it is, whether it's a circle or anything, these areas that are fatter are going to have big fat shadows. So we're going to change that. I ended up actually, and you can see as I kind of jump back and forth here how it's coming in, it's literally a section of those facets. I just cut them away from the original one and created these. And our bevel here is really just darkness. There's no lights. There's no highlights. So we don't need to worry about creating a white for this. It's strictly basically shadows. But what we have to do first is we have to basically sort of introduce our white base area. So I'm going to contract as usual 2 pixels. We're going to go back to our white base. And even though we had knocked it out before, I'm going to put it back in again because we're going to remove it. That's okay though. If you look at with the fabric and then the wedge is on, you can see that this has become bright again. But let's go to these little facets here. And you can see if I zoom up on them, there's some interest as far as the values. It's very dark, sort of a mid-tone. And then some of our core purple is coming through here. So we want to kind of maintain that. So let's go back up to our breakdowns. So let's look at the different ones. And I think green is the worst because there's no change. The reds kind of do close in contrast, but the blue has a nicer change in contrast. So I'm going to click and drag that down and make a copy. And then we are going to take that information and make a selection of it. And we're actually, before I do that though, I think I want a little bit more of that core. See these veins here where it's white? I'm going to open those up just a little bit more to let some of that purple color come through. Okay. And then I'm going to darken up some of this shadow again. We're going to go back into curves and I'm only going to target this value and I'm going to bump it up. So you can see it changing pretty quickly there. Actually, I'm going to go a little bit more. And I suggest playing with curves when you can because it's actually a very fundamental tool for changing halftones and getting what you want. Okay, so now let's make a selection of that. Let's go back up to our base. I'm going to hide those marching ants. I'm going to go make sure that white's in the background, and I'm just going to delete out. And look how fast those are just gone. So we got a little bit. Actually, I can see there's only about 17% here in the deepest shadow. I'm going to hit it one more time. Now it's 3%. So that should give us a nice variation. Let's go ahead and turn that fabric on, and then turn the actual purple wedges on. And now you can see the representation, how much nicer and interest this is here as it was compared to before. And also something else I want to remind you guys, don't forget to take your white from the wedges here and knock it out of your purple. Otherwise, you're going to have 100% of this white printed over 100% of purple. So don't forget to do that, because I forgot to tell you that last time. So let's go look at these all together again. And now you can see a much better representation of the original comp colors and then what we're doing here. Okay, so in the next video, we're going to add one more bevel. And actually, I'm going to turn on my fabric here and the other wedge, and I'm going to toggle here. And you can see it. There it is, right along that little edge right there. Because when you're working with different layer effects, you can't do two different layer effects of lights like this. We had to flatten what we had created here originally, and then we had to add this coming back later on. But we'll go over that next time. It'll be double. It'll be double bevels on that.
And if you can get more bevels, the more bevels, the better. Better bevels, as they say. I don't know if you can say that. He's Cory. I'm Lon. We're Graphic Elephants, and this has been the Art of Screen Printing presented by GSG. We'll see you all next time.